When I was running through this talk this morning with my husband, 2 minutes in, he stopped, he said, "Why do you sound so nervous?" I said, "I'm always nervous talking in front of people." He said, "You talk all the time." I said, "Yeah, it's not because I like it, right? I do it because people ask me to, and freely given, freely received information. And all of the things I'm going to share with you today are things I have learned from other people, right? So it came from other people saying, "I'm not an expert, but let me share a little bit of my experience, strength, and hope with you." Okay, those are the best lessons I've gotten as a worker. So that's been as a children's trauma therapist. I work with little kids 5 and under who have been through horrific things and have PTSD. So 3-year-olds who have seen a parent die in front of them, right? I work with couples for trauma therapy. I work with couples who say, "We're Christians, we don't believe in divorce, and we're so hurt. And we're so hurt by each other. And it feels like I'm in a business relationship with a partner that I want to end this relationship. And I don't understand what we're doing wrong." Good people, right? What do you do? I work with families. Hi, welcome. We're just getting warmed up. I work with families who've been through unimaginable things and moved numbers of times, right? Very, very direct clinical skills. But all of the things that I've learned of how to intervene have gone back to my own spiritual upbringing. I was born on the near west side in Ohio City, and my family on my father's side is a 4th generation set of parishioners from St. Patrick's Church, which has been a site, a mission site for Jesuits. They come, when you do missionary work overseas, for example, maybe you go to Cairo and teach people how to systemically organize. People did that in Cleveland for St. Pat's. That's what kind of neighborhood it was, right? And so as a young girl, all of my formative experiences of going to church many times a week involved coffee and fellowship after the service, where I tottered up and got my hot cocoa and sat down at a long table, and who's sitting across from me but someone who slept outside last night. So that was just a very normal part of my upbringing, was making eye contact and smiling and saying hello. So at the end, for the last 5 minutes, I'm going to watch my time here, because for the last 5 minutes of my talking, I'm going to teach you my very most effective trauma therapy interventions for kids and families. Okay, and I can do it in 5 minutes. I also am, as Steve mentioned, an adjunct faculty at Cleveland State University. And what I know about myself is, with 5 PowerPoint slides, I can talk for 3 hours. So I keep doing this, and I'm going to keep checking the time to give us some time for questions at the end. So Matthew 25, 34 and 35, it's 2 verses, and they're dense. They are just jam-packed with the things that we could be doing. And frankly, I've worked on a lot of really specialty grants over the last 22 years. And so I thought, what do they want me to talk about? Because I worked professionally with all of this, right? For I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me drink. I was a stranger, and you made me welcome. Naked, and you clothed me. Sick, and you visited me. In prison, and you came to see me. In the Catholic Church, we call those corporal works of mercy. Mercy you can do upon the body, right? And those are big parts of social work, is visiting people in all these situations. So today, I really wanted to reflect on the word welcome. And I hope that that's what you take from this conversation we're going to be having, is welcoming is the number one thing you can do. So the stranger made welcome in Cuyahoga County, thinking about who homeless people are. From my experiences in St. Patrick's, my picture of a homeless person is someone who's dirty, with gray hair, who is dressed in some layers of clothes, who is a male, probably has a beard, right? And nationally, when we look in the United States at individual homeless persons, so that's someone who comes in as a single person into a homeless shelter, they're between 30 and 35, a little older for men, a little younger for women. It's about a 6-year difference. And about 60% of the women are fleeing a domestic violence situation. So that is not people who go into domestic violence shelters. Those domestic violence shelters, which there's only one shelter for men who are in fear for their life from a domestic abuser, one in the whole country. The rest are all female. Those shelter beds are very, very limited, and those shelter beds are reserved for people in the most violent time, the highest mortality time for someone leaving an abuser, which is the 48 hours after they leave. So when we engage and we welcome people and they tell us, I don't feel safe at home, we ask them, when could it be safe for you to leave? And we trust them to know. And when you ask people that question, your heart will break at the answers. Here's the things I'm doing now. I make sure that I only talk to him in front of my mom. I make sure if we have a fight, it's not when we've been drinking. There's all these like tiptoe, eggshell things that women have to do for months and months and months. And I say women because 93% of victims of domestic violence are women, right? That does not mean 93% of perpetrators are men. That just means 93% are women. So that's why a lot of the services are funded there that way. Globally, what we know about homelessness is that the average age is 8. Because there are children living on the streets in so many countries, children who have been orphaned by war, by systemic poverty, by policies meant to intentionally oppress different people, that there are children who just live on the streets together because that's the safest thing for them, is to find another group of children and take turns sleeping and guarding their little possessions. Sometimes those possessions are, they call them risotoldos. There's a kind of airplane glue, like little model glue, that if you sniff it, you get high, and it's called risotol. And children who are addicted to it are called risotoldos. So you can buy this little craft glue. It's not available in the United States. It's only for sale in nations that have high homeless children populations, and it's very, very cheap. You can buy it with pocket money, you could beg. Because when you inhale it, it suppresses your hunger. So when we think about homelessness, that picture that we have of who it is, it comes from stories, right? And I know we like handouts and we like to take some notes. But one of the things I learned as a faculty member is that adults learn best when you don't give them the information in front of them. If I had, we call it death by PowerPoint. If I had PowerPoint slides and it was all the text, what we found is people retain 75% less information than if you just put up a picture. So I apologize, I'm throwing data at you, and the researcher in me is like, ooh, we don't have sources for you to look at, but I trust you, and I hope you trust me. So I want to ask you, if tragedy struck today, and you had to find some place for your household to live, to think about the options you have, and to think about how long you could really make it before you just depleted all of your resources. So I'm going to use my own family as an example. I currently have 6 people living in my house, but I really have 5 household members. My oldest daughter's moving out with her boyfriend in like 3 days, so he's just there every day, so he's really 6, right? But if I had to find some place for us to go tonight, my daughter and her boyfriend would likely stay somewhere else. So I'm looking for some place for 4 people, right? I could personally afford, in cash, to probably put my family up in an extended stay in America for like 2 months, right? Let's say this is not a Red Cross qualifying event, because a lot of times it's a house fire, and the Red Cross will put you up in a hotel until your things are fixed, right? There's a gas leak, there's an explosion on your block, whatnot. I'm talking about the many, many other things. So I had a coworker at Frontline Service. It's a local, large community mental health center. We worked full-time. We had health insurance. This woman was married to the father of her children. He worked full-time and another full-time job, and they were renting to own a house. And they had been leasing this house for 5 years. And one day, they went to go to the grocery store, and there's a sheriff on the other side of the door. And my friend is black, as is her husband, and so he closed the door. And they were like playing this push-pull thing with the knob, because he's like, why are the police here? The police were there because their landlord had stopped paying the mortgage 6 months earlier. So these are 2 adults with 3 full-time jobs who've been paying their bills, and they have to leave today. And they have to leave today. If I had to leave my house today, do you know where your high school diploma is? My husband had to submit a copy of his high school diploma to his work last year. He's been working there 13 years. It was a new FAA regulation. He could have lost his full-time job. I would not think to grab that. I'm leaving my house today and the sheriff says you have 15 minutes, right? The number of homeless people I have worked with over the past 22 years who have unbelievable documentation problems breaks your heart. I worked with a woman. This is how I got involved with the Metanoia Project. Cinda and I have done a lot of work with them through their board. I know Lakewood Presbyterian Church is really generous, and there's so many families who are really contributing in a very meaningful way every month with dinners at the Metanoia Project. I was working on a grant called Critical Time Intervention, CTI. In Critical Time Intervention, researchers said, we want to know who uses the most resources, like which individuals are using the most resources, and how do we target them? And we'll spend more money because we know that they're using 75% of homeless dollars nationally. So they said, we want to look at the top 10% longest stayers in homelessness. And what I expected, I've been working in the field 15 years of experience in Kentucky, Cincinnati, and Cleveland. And I expected it to be 45-year-old men addicted to crack. What we found was that it was disproportionately Vietnam veterans who had been living outdoors for 15 to 25 years. To me, a homeless services worker, I mean, I am a workhorse, right? Boots on the ground, front line. I had no idea. It was invisible to me. So we said, who sees these people? And it was the Metanoia Project. How do you find these people? They don't trust the VA. Many of these people qualify for VA services and say, no thanks. That's the level of trauma they have with their military involvement. And I know some of you remember what it was like to be in the military at that time, or to have family members. It was a very conflicting choice to be in the military at that time, and it was very ostracizing. So Metanoia was doing a phenomenal job, and what were they doing that was so different than anyone else? They were going out to meal sites. So one of the places they would take us to meet people is St. Paul's. St. Paul's on 45th and Franklin. They have Tuesday through Friday, they have coffee from like 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. You wouldn't think that would be what you need to do, but it is. Because if you're sleeping in a tent and the library doesn't open till 9 a.m., that's 3 extra hours that you could be inside on a day like today in a temperature like this to prevent frostbite. Because if you get frostbite, then you're talking about hospital stays, and they don't have to treat you. They have to keep you alive. And hospitals, frankly, don't have the bed space to be de facto warming centers, right? So that is an essential ministry, being open and having coffee. Welcome. welcoming the stranger, right? Yes.
Is this St. Paul's on the east side, St. Paul's Frank?
St. Paul's on West 45th and Franklin in Ohio City.
Oh, no.
So when I was doing street outreach to St. Paul's, one day I went on a Monday, I forgot they weren't open, and I show up with my backpack and my jeans and my t-shirt and my bestie, because you don't do street outreach alone. So my bestie was dressed the same, and someone smoking outside, they said, honey, if you're hungry, you gotta go across the street today. So number 2 is, you have to kind of dress like you need a meal, right? Because when you're sitting down to talk with people, if I wore business casual, I look like Department of Children's Services social worker, and that's not the vibe I'm going for, right? The vibe I'm going for is, I'd like to know what's going on with you today, right? I'd like to make some eye contact, I'd like to smile, I'd like to say welcome, and I'd like you to feel like I'm welcome. So that day, they said, sorry, you gotta go across the street. Did you know Herman's has breakfast, lunch, and dinner 7 days a week? No, we did not. And they have a 6 a.m. breakfast, which is really great if you are so cold that you have to stay at 2100 that night. 2100 Lakeside is Lutheran Metropolitan Ministries shelter. They house about 500 men a night through all their satellite locations. And you can go in for just that night. And people who are very traumatized and very avoidant of any kind of suit and tie will wait until 10 o'clock at night to go in. So they know they're not going to get a bed, they'll get a mat on the floor. But they also know no one's going to touch them or bother them, and they can kind of move their mats so they're not touching the walls, or they can see the door, or whatever it is that makes them feel safe enough that they can go to sleep for a few hours. And then they want to be up before the 7 a.m. wake up, because they don't want the crowds and the people, and they don't even want to have breakfast there. They don't even want to have shelter, or they don't want to have showers there, right? So they'll walk across the bridge, on a frigid day like this, they'll walk across the Lorraine Carnegie Bridge to get breakfast rather than shower and eat where they're at. So the level of trauma and avoidance and shutdown, it can't be overstated. Okay, we have 5 more minutes. So, my family has been through a similar situation. My husband and I, when we were under 25, we had 2 children, so that's a prime entering a family shelter family is head of household under 25, making poverty wages or less, with 3 children. That's the typical family we see coming in. And our landlord stopped paying the mortgage. And we came home and we had a sticker on our door. You have 48 hours to vacate your house that we were leasing to own. I had so much stuff in my junk drawer. Like, all of my time is emptying drawers and making sure I have socks and all the things that you accumulate in a house over the course of 2 years. Many homeless families I've worked with have been in that situation, with 1 or 2 working household members who have become homeless for situations they can't control. Now, I had family support, right? I was not at that time able to, I probably couldn't have afforded 2 nights in a hotel at that point because I was a social worker. I don't want to make you guys jealous. I was making $11 an hour. So it was too much for food stamps, too much for daycare vouchers, not enough for hotels, right? But I had ace in the hole. My in-laws, the Gormans, had 5 bedrooms in their house. So we were able to move into their upstairs while our house here was being finished by my family. So we were able to stay with them for 2 or 3 months, right? And I will tell you that staying 2 families in a home, doubled up for 3 months with gracious people who loved us, it's a long time, okay? That's a very long time. Homeless families, when they enter shelter, have been homeless an average of 13 months, living doubled up like that, and they've moved 6 to 8 times. Have you all moved before? You never find the whisk, right? I lost my baby doll clothes of my Cabbage Patch doll. How much did I love my Cabbage Patch doll? Her name was Emily. My oldest daughter's name is Emily. That's how much I love my Cabbage Patch doll. I've never forgotten it. 1986, someone got those Cabbage Patch doll clothes. So these families have lost pictures, keepsakes, favorite pieces of clothing, their wedding silver. Things break in the move. People say they'll hold on to things for you and then their car gets robbed, right? I had one woman who was 75. She couldn't move into senior housing because she had been born in a home, like a home birth, assisted by a midwife in Pennsylvania in the 1940s. The place in that county where they held records of home births burned to the ground. It had not been digitized. And she started going by her stepdad's name in grade school, because you could do that in the 60s and 70s. You could just say, my name is now Patty Smith, and they would change it on your form. So she couldn't, and she worked Social Security under that name. So her driver's license, her Social Security card, her Social Security benefits, and her birth certificate didn't line up. So she couldn't qualify for senior housing. So she was collecting a check. She couldn't live anywhere. So she was collecting a check and living in a shelter for years. I can't even remember what we did to help her. There's so many documentation problems, we just couldn't even remember. I think we got a baptismal record, and then a confirmation thing. So we were able to use religious records. Church, stepping up. All right, I want to leave time for questions, so I'm going to show you my very favorite therapy intervention. So I use these with families. I use these with adults. When I have a mom coming in for services and she says, I don't have childcare, I say, bring them in. And she says, well, I don't want them to hear things. I could give you a list of things I wasn't supposed to know by the time I was 10, right? We hear our parents talking when we're in the other room. We know when our parents are really, really sad and trying to act like they're not really, really sad. We also know kids don't listen to you at all when they're playing Candy Crush, right? So at a certain age, just give them the phone, right? Now, if you can make one of these, you too can sit with a family. Have you guys ever been a mother and tried to eat with 3 children next to you? If you're at Westside Catholic Center having lunch with a family, or you're with LPC and you're serving a meal, I would like you. Anyone recognize this? Yeah. All right. Cinda, pick a country. Egypt, Italy, Greece, or Brazil?
Brazil.
B-R-A-Z-I-L. Pick a number.
6.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, 3, 4, 7, or 8.
4.
Okay, these are fortune tellers. Your future career is you're going to be a right Twix factory worker. How long do you think you could play this game with a 10-year-old at the table?
At least an hour.
My helpers. They come with me to everything. These are my daughters. And at the end of trauma therapy, sometimes this is all I'm doing is teaching kids how to make a fortune teller. This is like a little origami fold. We had to. You couldn't be a girl and not know how to do this when I was in grade school, right? Kids don't know how to make these anymore. So I will take a list of random acts of kindness and say, let's make one of these and we'll put them all in the middle. And who should we make doing a random act of kindness? Oh, let's make your mom do it. Okay, let's think of 8 random acts of kindness, right? I'm doing this for an entire therapy session. We're folding, we're practicing folding. They're getting it wrong. I'm teaching distress tolerance. I'm teaching coping skills. I'm making eye contact. I'm not getting mad at them for getting it wrong. That's therapy, right? This is for if you go to a HEAP office, Home Energy Assistance Program. You're going to have to wait 5 hours. What emotion is that? Surprise. I don't know. Gross, right? We go like this, and I make a face, and then you copy my face, and then after you copy my face, you try to guess. And then we do it again. You make a face. And then I copy your face. I have played this game with so many kids for so long. All you need is a scarf. All you need is anything. You can do it with a mirror in your pocket. And you know what that's doing? That warm eye contact. You are triggering serotonin and dopamine release in the brain. Warm eye contact we are primed for as human beings. And when we're born, we cannot eat on our own. We cannot walk. We cannot control our bowels. We're useless, right? We can't even see that far. How far can we see? Exactly this far. Because that's how far we need to be able to see when someone who loves us is making warm eye contact for 10 to 15 seconds. So you're training, you're releasing dopamine, and that's building the limbic structure of infants. I bet you guys didn't know you're neuroscientists. We're building neuron connections. That's why warm eye contact is so important. So when we have depressed moms and traumatized moms, they don't look at their kids in the eyes. Because they need it too, right? So it can be reciprocal. So trauma therapy with kids under 5, I'm trying to think, if I have nothing and I'm stuck on a bus, how can I release serotonin and dopamine for mom and baby so that they can be a little bit more calm on that bus ride, right? So we just think of different games that are not staring someone down, not reassuring, right? All right. Allison, what's my number one tool as a therapist?
Listening ears.
Okay, fine, I didn't think about it. Listening ears is number one. Aliana, what's my number one tool? What's my number two tool as a therapist?
Slime and Legos.
Slime and Legos is correct. Are you hip to slime? You guys know what it is?
Yes.
This is a leftover Chinese food container. And this is probably 35 cents worth of blue borax water. And I like Model Magic. I like the way it feels, okay? There's like 100 slime recipes and every kid will tell you what they are. If you have these at a meal site, can you imagine how many more bites of food I could chew as a mother trying to eat with my 3 kids? I play therapy games. I played a therapy game last night with someone. He's got a lot going on. His older sister is in trauma treatment for me because his dad, we just found out, had been sexually assaulting his older sister for about the last 5 years, unbeknownst to anyone, right? So he's in trauma therapy because he misses his dad and he's 5 and he doesn't know why dad's not around. Because the sister's not telling him yet, and that's okay. So he's in because he misses his dad. So there's all these things going on I'm mindful of. This is the intervention, is we're sitting here and he's pulling on one end and I'm pulling on the other. While I'm talking to mom about how's his grades in 3rd quarter. And how are we doing with the intervention we tried, which is noticing positive praise and unwinding it through his fingers. And this kid who has a sensory processing disorder and cannot stop moving, an attention deficit disorder, and he's real impulsive. He's the sweetest little kid. He's so fun, right? He sits and just smiles and lets me goop it around him. Some kids don't like the cold feeling. So we also have kinetic sand, which is squishy, right? I also have sandbox sand. Because some people don't like the kinetic sand and they don't like that feel. Some people don't like the sand on their fingers. So in my office, I have lots of different textures of things that we can use to engage, to touch, to ground to this moment. So if we're having a flashback, we're triggered into something, it's grounding them. We feel it on our hands and we take deep breaths, right? These are my best interventions. And these are things you can do at a meal site. So I'm going to stop talking. I could go for stop talking. And I'm going to ask what questions you have for me.
What's a borax made out of?
Borax is a laundry detergent. It's an additive. So the 40-multine borax, it's white and blue with red letters, that's what it is. I am terrible at making slime. That's my chemist right here. She makes it all for me.
So you put a little water in it?
Yeah, so you take something like this and you add like a teaspoon of borax. We have it in a little mason jar at home. And then you spoon the water into the glue and like mix it, and it turns into that.
Oh, glue too.
Glue. Cinda?
When we get back to being able to be with the guests at Metanoia, which we can't do right now, but when we get back, what are some appropriate ways to engage in conversation without sounding like we're interrogating somebody?
Good question. So I learned once I was doing street outreach and sitting with people, I would they would say, who are you? What are you from? Are you one of the VA people? Are you one of the medical people? Once we realized there was a meal site where people who are usually treatment resistant go, mobile clinic vans will go there and say, okay, well, if you need your pedicure, the podiatrist to see you, we have a podiatrist every Tuesday who comes if you're going to be here anyway, right? So I'm one of those like ancillary support services workers, and they're like, she's a mental health worker, she's a housing worker. And I got word of mouth once I was sitting and talking with people and not trying to negotiate them into treatment first. Saying, if you quit drinking, I think you'd probably save up money for your apartment faster. Making trying to solve the problem for people that you think that that's what you want to do. And again, this comes from humans. We learn from stories, not from facts, right? And we love a story. And what we want for a story is the resolution. We see homeless people, we want housing, right? We want the reassurance that there's going to be a closure. What we have to be willing to do, which is really the hard stuff, is to sit with people just like we would at a funeral. You have ever been to a funeral of a child who's died? Is there a right thing to say?
Nothing.
Is there a fix? Is there closure? What can we do, right? Is go there and say, I don't even know what to say, but I can be with you here right now, right? I don't know how to fix this. I wish I knew how to fix this. If it was easy, you probably would have thought of it by now, wouldn't you? Don't you think? I think you probably don't want to sleep outside more than I don't want you to sleep outside. So coming into it and voicing this makes me kind of uncomfortable. What must it be like for you? People really respect that and engage in that, right? So I was working with people who had been offered housing. People who have been homeless 25 years. It's not that they haven't had options. It's that the options seem impossible to them. So my option right now of living in, I could make it work for 2 or 3 months maybe in an extended stay America. And then I have to decide, am I going to go stay with my mom? She has so many bedrooms. I don't think I can stay there. I would rather stay in a homeless shelter though. How long could I make that work, right? What if I didn't have that mom? What if my option was to stay with Stevenson again? They sold their 5-bedroom house. This is really inconvenient for me. They have a bungalow. I cannot stay in a bungalow. I can't sleep on their love seat, right? Intolerable. Other people, I have personally offered one woman 6 apartments over a 5-year span. I'm like, we're ready for move in today. She's like, if I move in there, I can't afford to feed all the stray cats and dogs all over Lakewood. She has a monthly bus pass. She's got a shopping cart full of dog food and cat food, and she says, if I don't feed them, no one will. She goes all around the county. It's inconceivable to her to stop doing that. If she was in that apartment she would be so distraught thinking about starving cats and dogs. And you cannot tell her that those cats and dogs are going to be fine, because she will not believe you, right? Okay. We have another question. Yes.
Yeah, so all the one-on-one you've been talking about having with these people, how have you been able to do that through the worst of the lockdown and everything, where, you know, a lot of places are having soup kitchens and stuff, shut all that down and everything, but obviously all these people in need was still there. How did that go for the last 2 years?
So in the last 2 years, I have been a private practice therapist, and I have an office in Beechwood, and an office in North Olmsted, and an office in Rocky River, and I continue seeing people face to face, because I have found you cannot build Legos virtually. It doesn't work out. And the kids, I would say 10 and under kids, Zoom therapy is really difficult for them, in part because of online schooling. So if you've been in an online school environment for an 8-year-old, this is what it is. You have to keep your camera on. You're not allowed to look like you're sleeping. Other than that, that's it. That's pretty much the requirements, right? And the teacher is reading a book, and everyone's cameras are on and microphones are off, and so the kids are doing this all day for 6 hours. So now tell them they're going to meet with their therapist online, and they're like, right? So then they come into therapy, and I ask a question to just them, and they answer. And I ask a question to just them, and they answer. And they can do it for like 20 minutes. And they're so overwhelmed because they feel like they're in trouble in school. And the teacher's trying to ask them question after question because they think they're not paying attention. So I've done virtual as much as I can. A lot of my adults and my teens are still virtual. Face-to-face, I do 6 to 8 feet away masked. Right now, because of the CDC recommendations I do 6 to 8 feet away, unmasked, and I put on a mask for up-close play. In most families, that's been their preference throughout Corona, is we wear a mask and we do up-close. And for 2.5 years, I've not gotten COVID, so it's worked, and nor have I been a super spreader, which was a major concern. But also, these are the first 2 years since I turned 18. I was a homeless services worker when I was 19 years old. These are the first 2 years I haven't gotten strep throat or pneumonia, because we're wearing masks, and kids are so dirty. And they were like, oh, you have to wipe everything down and use hand sanitizer. And you know, my Mary Poppins bag, I'm like, yeah, I got it. I got wiping everything down because of flu season. And if you've never worked at a homeless shelter during the flu season, I'll tell you what, you get to know the executive director really well when all the shelter staff are out sick and the ED has to come in and work second shift with you. So I've been used to all of these things. So to some degree, in homeless services, homeless people are humans and they have human problems. So anything you would find in humans that are in close contact, lice, scabies, bed bugs, the flu, the cold, hepatitis A, hepatitis B, we've all been pretty hyper-vigilant about those things throughout my career, so it hasn't changed too much. What has changed is the ability for volunteers to come in and be a part of that. So I'm anxiously awaiting the number one intervention. I'm doing very specific trauma therapies with people, right? What I don't have time to do is sit with them for 3 hours and drink water and kind of chat, right? Because it's really hard to get a children's therapist. So the really practical things that you can do are the things that you are doing, which is creating spaces for workers like me to come in and build relationships. Creating spaces that people want to be in that are warm and welcoming and friendly, where they know they're going to be treated like a person. Needs assessments at the Magnolia Project, because we were looking at where do we want to be and what do we want to look like and what kind of space do we want. And we asked our guests, what makes Metanoia different than other shelters? And they said, I feel like a person here. What can we do to better expand the services? So at the time it was weekends from I think like November 1st to April 1st. And any day that the temperature was below 22 degrees. So you kind of got to be hip to what the temperature is officially to know where you're going to sleep that night. So what can we do to be of more service to you? And they said, open 7 days a week, 365. This is the only place we want to be. So that warm and welcoming place has been built by interdenominational fellowship and agreements and people who are really committed like yourselves to living their faith and living their faith the way Jesus did. We know that the Bible is not a book. It is a bookshelf. And it's a bookshelf that is intimately connected and interconnected with each other, right? Okay, there's two people in here who can't answer this question. You know who you are. The only miracle in all four Gospels. I mean the resurrection, okay? That one's in all of them. The loaves and fishes. Biblical. Warm and welcome. It's biblical. Jesus didn't attract people to his ministry of spreading the good news through policy. He spread it by being someone you want to have a glass of wine with. You know? So living my faith in government-funded work has included talking with people about what are your spiritual beliefs? What are your faith beliefs? Did you grow up with any kind of idea of what people need to do for forgiveness? Do you have any rituals when you were little that just made you feel holy? I remember going to Christmas Eve Vigil, my favorite service. I got to wear pajamas. It was midnight mass, started at midnight, and there were candles. How can I capture that as an adult, knowing that I'm not a full person in the Catholic Church, and I have a lot of church hurt about that? How do I find the parts of my faith that are deeply rooted in me and connect me to the presence of God in my heart? Right? I can have those conversations with people on federal grants because I'm asking them, what are the things that are most supportive for you in your development of mental health care? And if I write the note that way, not a problem, right? So finding ways to bring our faith into the moment does not need to be dogmatic, and it does not need to be evangelical. So that's what I have found to be the most helpful.
And we're getting close to noon, and people have a schedule, but
Yes.
are there any last questions that you'd like? Because can you stay for
I can stay.
a little while for individual conversations? But thank you for challenging my mind in the whole aspect of reaching out to people who are hurting. And because I'm a fixer. I'm a mixture. I admit it. I'm going to be with you for 15 minutes and I'm going to fix this. That's how you teach trauma. You fix it real fast. So we've got a lot to talk about and learn from you and from others about this. So let us thank Patty. She's going to stay. Thank you so much your presence with us, and have a great week. And we will be talking through Matthew 25 more about ways that this congregation can contribute to helping people along the way. Thank you.